What if you were the only person you had to impress? What would you be doing with your time instead of worrying what others think of you? I think this is a really important question to ask yourself because we can really get lost in the perception we think others have of us, what we think they're thinking about us, saying about us, believing about us. We might spend our entire lives trying to impress others, whether that's our parents, our partners, our friends, our community, whatever. Spending all our lives, all our energy trying to impress them based on their standards instead of focusing on what would be impressive to me. What would impress me about myself? What would I have to do, try, show myself, whatever, that would make me feel impressed with my strength or my vulnerability or my, capability, whatever that might be for you. I think this is a really important question to ask yourself. I would use it as a journaling prompt, really, because to not know what would impress you above anybody else leaves you susceptible to then being willing to settle for a lot in your life, whether from yourself or from someone else. If you don't even know what would impress you, how can you then truly feel even impressed by someone else? And I'm not saying that we should be out here trying to impress one another or only accepting things that impress us as though we're just looking for people who can do magic tricks all the time or whatever. What I mean is, if you don't know what is truly engaging and inspiring or interesting to you based on what you show yourself, how can you then seek that out in another person? You are more open then to having anybody enter your life because we attract people, different kinds of people all the time. But then we will gravitate towards people based on our wounds or our insecurities or whatever. If you don't have an idea of what is truly impressive to you or interesting to you, anybody could show up and do anything, and you won't have a clear idea of whether or not that aligns with you in any way, if that's interesting to you. You might not be tapped into that deep connection with yourself to even say, oh yeah, you know what, I do like that, or there's something there for me that I think is really interesting that will align with this part of me that I understand about myself. You won't be able to do that. And so you'll accept people who might not be aligned with you in any interesting, valuable way, but they're just there. And then you might focus too much on trying to impress them and worrying about what they're thinking about you versus what am I thinking about me right now? And does this person align with what I think about me? We're bringing that focus back to ourselves, and not in a self-centered way, even though, we are the main person in our lives. So we should center ourselves for sure, but not in the sense where you completely disregard anybody else in your life. Of course, we're interdependent creatures. We need each other at the end of the day, but you have to focus on yourself a little bit more, particularly if you're a people pleaser, an overthinker, a ruminator. You're probably leaking a lot of your energy toward other people, what they think of you, what they need from you, whether or not you're interesting enough for them to stay. You might have a lot of abandonment wounds here that make you feel like a performing, dancing monkey to entertain them, to keep them there, instead of asking yourself, what would entertain me to keep me here with me? Because, you are in a relationship with yourself as well. Many people disconnect from themselves. Just because you're with yourself your entire life does not mean you're truly connected with yourself. A lot of us, detach from ourselves, attach to someone else to avoid the work we need to do to cultivate a healthy, solid relationship with ourselves. We seek it out in other people. So if you're a people pleaser who has been, over empathetic to others, over focused on others, you might not have a strong foundational relationship with yourself. And so all your energy is going to these other people, wanting them to stay to make you feel more worthy of being chosen, rather than focusing on what would make me feel worthy enough to be chosen by myself. What am I really showing myself here that would make me want to stay with me? There's probably not much, because otherwise you wouldn't want to escape yourself all the time and, find yourself in another person, which is not necessarily possible. Like, yes, we can find parts of ourselves through people that we might have otherwise not been able to find on our own. Sure, that is the point of relationships at the end of the day. But if you're always escaping yourself in the hopes that somebody else will show you your worth and value. That's not really going to happen. And it's just going to make you feel worse about yourself in the long run. It'll affect your self-worth even more than it's already affected. So it's really important to ask yourself, what's impressive to me? What would impress me? And I don't mean this in a performative way, to perform for yourself, to have this kind of false identity to make yourself feel valuable in this superficial sense to yourself. I mean, what would truly impress you that you haven't done before or you haven't experienced before? Like for me, as an example, the work I've done, the personal growth work I've done throughout the years is incredibly impressive to me as someone who has spent many years as a people pleaser, as always over considering others over myself, often neglecting myself in certain ways. To see even small choices that are for me versus somebody else who might not really even be an important figure in my life, that is impressive to me. Something as small as that, as just making a choice for myself, that's impressive to me. Or being able to voice an opinion without fearing being, seeming stupid or embarrassed, that's impressive to me. Even putting myself out there with my content online, that's been so impressive to me, because for a long time I felt like I couldn't do that it wasn't just not, I wasn't good at it. It was impossible for me. And so to see this huge repertoire of work I've put out there throughout the years, that's impressive to me. And it's just, to me, impressive. It might not be impressive to anybody else in the way that it's impressive to me. To me, it feels like life-changing. But to someone else who is looking at it from the outside and comparing it maybe to other creators, it might not be as impressive, but it's impressive to me. That's what matters. To me, I've impressed myself in some way because I've shown myself something different than what I thought was possible for me. And it can be in the smallest of ways. It does not have to be you putting yourself out there online or whatever. It could be anything that you can look at yourself and say, wow, like that is so impressive. I am so impressed with you. And so maybe you never really heard that from your caregivers growing up, or maybe you were always forced to focus more on them and their needs. So you've never experienced what it feels like to be someone who's just impressive for being who they are, or for challenging themselves, or for whatever. And so now I think it's time for you to show that to yourself, to bring that attention back to you, the attention that maybe was never given to you throughout your life. And it's important because you need to be able to look at yourself and say, I'm impressed by you. Like, you are impressive. You're cool. You're funny. You're whatever. Because otherwise, why would you want a relationship with yourself if the person that you're in a relationship with is not reinforcing those positive beliefs about you, who isn't giving you words of affirmation? Why would you want to stay with someone like that? You won't. You'll try to escape them. But because it's you can't really escape unless you over focus on someone else. You attach to someone else or something else. Maybe you attach too much to your work, and that allows you to escape yourself, whatever it might be for you. It's important to be able to say, I'm impressed by you, to yourself. So what would be impressive to you? If you don't have to think about anybody else's idea of you, impressing them, dancing for them, entertaining them, what would that mean for you? What would be impressive to you? What would make you feel like, wow, that's so interesting or funny or whatever? Really challenge yourself to sit with that and consider what that looks like. How would you impress yourself? And anything can be impressive too. Again, like I said, it doesn't have to be anything grand, but it can be something small enough that you feel a little bit more confident when you realize that, wow, yeah, I couldn't do this before and now I can. Which also then shows you that there's a potential for change in your life. It doesn't always have to be rooted in somebody else. The ability to change or to grow or to see something new. It doesn't have to be through another person all the time. It can be through you. You're showing yourself in micro ways that change is possible, that growth is possible, that every day is a new beginning where you can show yourself something new, something a little more impressive, or something just impressive in a different way. I think that's like one of the most valuable things you can do for yourself, really. And then, of course, it's really important to reinforce that by telling yourself, congratulating yourself, patting yourself on the back, telling yourself you're proud of yourself. Like, all of that stuff is so important. I know it sounds almost cheesy and silly, but we do need to hear it from ourselves. If we don't hear it from ourselves, then we'll always be seeking it out from other people. And other people shouldn't have to do that for us. It's great when they do, and it's lovely, and it is part of being in relationships, of course. Like, you should, of course, if you're dating someone or if you're in a friendship, you should expect them to be kind to you in that way, of course. You don't want them to be putting you down. but it shouldn't be the only source of that for you. If that's the only place you're looking for it from, then you're not doing it enough for yourself. You have to do it a bit more for yourself, so that even if you don't get it from others, because maybe they're going through their own stuff, or they're just not present right now because they're struggling, whatever, you have a reservoir of it within you, as you should, all the time. So when we overgive, when we people please too much, we drain ourselves. We don't have that reservoir there because maybe we're overgiving it to other people. You have to have some there for you. And it should always be there, and it should always be utilized. You should constantly be using it and refilling it and replenishing it so that you have it available, so that you aren't ever starving, right? You aren't ever thirsty for it because you have completely drained it of yourself. So I implore you to sit down and journal about what would be impressive for you. Now that you don't have to think about or worry about what other people think is impressive about you, to impress them, entertain them, what would it mean for you to impress yourself? List out a few things, see what sticks with you, and see what you can actually attempt today. Something small even, so that you can look at yourself after and say, wow, that's actually really impressive. Like, I'm actually really impressed with myself. Try it and see how you feel about it afterwards, because I think it can be really life-changing. And obviously this takes time to kind of come to full fruition within you. It's not going to happen overnight, of course. All of this takes time and consistency and discipline and all that stuff. But it's just about taking that first step and showing yourself how it feels at first. And once you feel it and you feel how good it feels, you'll want to keep doing it. And then the more you do it, the more you change your self-perception. And the more you change your self-perception, the more you can actually change your life, right? Because then you're seeing yourself as a completely different person. And a different person does different things, whatever that might mean for you. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative. I hope it gave you a different perspective on this. If you want to talk to me one-to-one and pick my brain a bit, you can book a one-to-one call over on my website. If you want to see some of my short form content, you can follow me on TikTok and Instagram. And if you want to read about these things, I write a lot over on Substack. So feel free to follow me over there. Other than that, thank you for being here, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.